Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're continuing our reading of Brhad Bhagavatarmrta. We're on chapter 1, titled Bhauma on the Earth. We're on text 13. After Janmejaya, the son of Parikshit, heard the wonderful Mahabharata recited by the great sage Jaimini, Janmejaya was still eager to hear more, and so he inquired about the supplement to that commentary. Here we are told when and under what circumstances Jaimini spoke this narration to Janmejaya. The Mahabharata, compiled by Vyasadeva, is the history of the pious royal dynasty of the Bharatas. In the only version available in modern times, the narrator Vaisapayana states that other authentic versions of this history were spoken besides his. One of these other Mahabharats was narrated by Jaimini Rishi to the same Janmejaya, who had heard the Mahabharata from Vaishapayana. Hearing this second version had a wonderful effect on Janmejaya, for it was like nothing he had ever heard before. He therefore eagerly inquired if there was some supplement he could also hear, and Jaimini was able to fulfill his request. As Harivamsha is the khila supplement to Vaishapayana's Mahabharata, Sri Brihad Bhagavatamrta is the khila to Jaimini's. 14. Sri Janmejaya said, O Brahmana, by hearing the Mahabharata from Vaishapayana, I never obtained the same relish I have now obtained by hearing from you. Please complete this recitation with perfect sweetness. King Janmejaya preferred the second version of the Mahabharata, the version he had heard from Jaimini Rishi, because it more openly revealed the transcendental tastes of loving service rendered to Krishna. Srila Dvaipayana Vyasa had presented his other Mahabharata to appeal to the widest possible audience, who are frivolous women, uncultured men, and materialistic brahmanas. And so, in the course of telling his epic, he had, for the most part, hidden Lord Krishna's glories. In the Mahabharata, narrated by Vaisapayana, Krishna usually acts subordinate to the Pandavas as their friend and advisor, rarely showing his supremacy. On the testimony of Janmejaya, recorded for us by Srila Sanatana Goswami, Jaimini's Mahabharata is by contrast a purely devotional scripture on the sublime level of Vyasadev's later masterpiece, Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Sanatana is a transcendental genius, an eternal resident of Golok Vrindavan, and an intimate companion of the personality of Godhead's internal pleasure potency. He can easily perceive anything he wants to, in the past, present, or future, including lost scriptures from previous ages. If we have confidence in this, we shall discover in Sri Brihad Bhagavatamrita more than the subtle sense gratification sometimes called nectar by immature devotees. We shall discover our own eternal selves. Janmejaya addressed Jaimini with the word Brahman, which ordinarily means O Brahmana, but here it can also appropriately mean O personification of Brahman, the Vedic sound. The king makes a request an audience has a right to make of a speaker, that the recitation end with something especially delightful. Madhurena samapayat. One should end on a sweet note. There's a common saying among connoisseurs of devotional poetry. Here the element of madhura asked for is specially rasa, the ecstatic taste known only between the Supreme Lord and his pure devotees in their various personal reciprocations. Janmejaya's hearing from Jaimini will aptly conclude with this rasa, just as a good meal ends with a dessert like Srikhand. Text 15 and 17. Sri Jaimini said, by hearing the instructions of Shukdev Goswami, Sriman Parikshit was relieved of all fear. all his ambitions satisfied. He was absorbed in pure love for Sri Krishna. Now, as the time came near for the king to ascend to the destination he desired, his mother, Virata's daughter, a surrendered devotee of Krishna, approached him in great distress while he was alone. After Parikshit had consoled and pleased her by his greetings, she asked of him as follows, immersed in love for her son. Commentary. To satisfy King Janmejaya's sincere desire, Jaimini recalls how Janmejaya's saintly father, Parikshit, some years before, had finished hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from Shukdev Goswami, and the hour had come for Parikshit to prepare for his fated death. Jaimini Rishi here divulges that Maharaj Parikshit's mother came to see her son just at that moment. Even though Parikshit was sitting several miles from his palace and very little time remained, his mother Uttara was impelled to see him just once more, knowing she would never see him again and eager not to lose the last opportunity to hear from him topics about Krishna. After Shukdev taught Srimad Bhagavatam to Maharaj Parikshit, Parikshit no longer feared the monstrous snake bird nor any material illusion. He was Shriman, blessed by the Lord's divine consort Sri. He had effortlessly achieved the benefit of each of the essential human endeavors, which are religiosity, economic development, sense enjoyment, and liberation. And beyond those benefits, he was immersed in a flood of prema rasa at the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. His mother approached him while he was absorbed in that ecstasy. A mother about to lose her son is naturally forlorn, but Uttara's sorrow was eclipsed by her eagerness to hear what her son had just heard from Shukdev Goswami about Lord Krishna's glories. Because she wanted to hear the confidential essence of Shukdev's instructions, she approached her son as he sat alone. With a pacifying greeting and a brief philosophical reminder about the illusory nature of birth and death, Maharaj Parikshit quickly dispelled whatever motherly anxiety she felt. Thus, she now Thus she was now joyful and fixed in the affection for Sri Krishna and for her son, the great devotee of Krishna. 18. Blessed Uttara said, my dear son, please extract the essence of what Shukdeva has taught you and quickly reveal it to me, as if churning the nectar of immortality from the ocean of milk. Commentary. Srimad Bhagavatam is a ripe fruit of the Vedic desire tree. Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam. Everything spoken by Sri Shukdev to Maharaj Parikshit is essential. It represents the best of the Vedic teachings, chosen and arranged to guide students of the Bhagavatam quickly and surely toward pure devotional service to Krishna. But Uttara does not have 7 days to hear the whole Bhagavatam from her son. Only if he can condense for her the essence of this essence and speak it to her in the short time remaining will her hankering for the unalloyed nectar of prema bhakti be satisfied. Someone might suggest that Parikshit need only repeat to her a single confidential pastime of Krishna and Vrindavan, but that would be inappropriate. One can properly relish the most intimate loving dealings of the Lord only after first submitting one's heart to a thorough cleansing. Therefore, Shukdev Goswami spoke 9 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam just to prepare Parikshit Maharaj for full understanding before beginning to narrate Krishna's Vrindavan Leela. Mother Uttara now soberly asks her son to use his discrimination to remove her misunderstandings and elevate her to Krishna consciousness. As a farmer takes several canes of sugar to extract a cup of sweet juice, Parikshit would carefully consider his realizations of the entire Bhagavatam and extract its essence. Or, using Uttara's own metaphor, his narration should be like the nectar of immortality from the demigods and demons churned with great effort from the ocean of milk. 19. Sri Jaimini said, King Parikshit, feeling affection for his mother, answered her respectfully, eager to enjoy recounting the wonderful narrations he had just heard about Lord Govinda. Commentary. Because the Bhagavatam had aroused in him a transcendental attraction, Parikshit was quite willing to satisfy his mother's request. Added to his already great enthusiasm to keep hearing and chanting the Bhagavatam, his natural affection for his mother made him all the more eager to speak. In this mood, he was ready to reveal the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam. 20. Sri Parikshit, known as Vishnu Rata, said, Mother, at a time like this, one should observe silence. But your delightful questions impels me to speak. 21 and to 23. I shall speak by the mercy of my spiritual master, Sriman Badara, Badarayani, who is also known as Shukdev Goswami. First, let me offer respects to our Lord and Master, Sri Achyuta, who granted the gift of life to you and your son. His compassionate grace inspired the best of his pure devotees in the great effort to extract the nectar of Srimad Bhagavatam. The greatest sages have approved this resulting work, which is full of confidential truth. Please listen with attention as I faithfully repeat it to you. Commentary. The original Vedic Shrutis and their derivative Smritis mostly reflect the general interests of human beings who strive for material progress, rarely inquiring philosophically into the purpose of life. The confidential science of pure devotional service is taught explicitly only in a few Vedic scriptures, little known to the public. Among these rare texts are the Gopal Tapani Upanishad, the Narada Pancharatra, the Garga Samhita, the Vishnu Purana, the Hari Vamsha Upapurana, the Uttarakhanda of the Padma Puran, and the Bhagavad Mahapurana. Parikshit Maharaj now offers to recite to his mother what he calls Srimad Bhagavatarmrta, the relishable theme of all the Vedic scriptures that teach pure bhakti. These exceptional scriptures are Srimat, rich in spiritual value, and have the potency to give knowledge, renunciation, and devotion. The distilled essence of these scriptures is Amrita, a heavenly beverage that bestows immortality, like the nectar churned from the milk ocean, from which all sorts of priceless treasures spontaneously arose. During the 7 days in which Parikshit Maharaj had prepared for death, Shukdev Goswami had spoken only Srimad Bhagavatam. But because Srimad Bhagavatam is the sum and substance of all bhakti scriptures, those scriptures revealed their conclusion through the discussion. Putra wants to hear the essence of all devotional literature, and her son will answer accordingly. The Bhagavatam spoken by Sri Shukdeva is all beautiful, both in text and in purport. Nothing in Srimad Bhagavatam is superfluous. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Shukdev Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Bhagavatam 1.1.3. Authorities like Shukdev Goswami testify to this truth from their own experience. Nonetheless, nonetheless, perfect devotees may feel inclined to listen to some parts of the Bhagavatam more than others. The extraordinary Vaishnavas who have developed an unquenchable thirst for the honest, for the honey flowing directly from Sri Gopinath's lotus feet feel no attraction for hearing anything other than Srimad Bhagavatam. Just as even beginners in the process of devotional service no longer want to hear about jnana yoga and impersonal liberation, or as those striving for liberation lose interest in the topics of material development and worldly pleasures. Every discussion in Srimad Bhagavatam, in fact, glorifies Krishna, the lover of the gopis. But pure devotees sometimes consider the passages not directly describing those intimate glories less important. The self-realized Vaishnavas must be allowed their preferences, but neophyte devotees should not cheaply imitate them. Devotees not free from faults should strictly follow the complete course of the instructions of Srimad Bhagavatam from the first chapter of Canto 1 through the last chapter of Canto 12. By repeated systematic study of the entire Bhagavatam and its authorized explanations, devotees can aspire to gradually become fit to taste the immortal nectar hidden within it. Shukdev, Narad, and other Vaishnavas of their caliber contributed to this Brihad Bhagavatamrta, and it is approved by great sages like Parashara and Vyasadeva. It presents the absolute truth clearly, not vaguely like some textbooks on mantras and yoga, or honestly like unauthorized pseudo spiritual works. It presents the truth thoroughly, not superficially like the works of unqualified authors who have little to say and who say less, out of fear of losing their readers' attention. The essence of Srimad Bhagavatam, as explained by Maharaj Parikshit to his mother, forms the ultimate summary of Vedic knowledge. Texts 24 and 25. Once a group of exalted sages were at Prayag, the best of pilgrimage sites, during the month of Magha. The sages had taken their bath and were happily seated before the deity of Sri Madhav. Feeling satisfied, as if all their goals in life had been fulfilled, they were praising one another, saying, "You are the recipient of Lord Krishna's mercy." Commentary. These sages at Prayag were humble devotees of Krishna. Each of them disliked hearing himself praised and was thus trying to divert the praise to someone else. Appreciative of one another's good qualities, they could honestly tell one another, "You are the Lord's dearmost devotee." When Vaishnavas are friendly to one another like this, their community prospers. Prayag is called Tirtha Murdhanya, the chief of holy places, because it is located at the confluence of the rivers Ganga and Yamuna. The sages were there at the most auspicious time for bathing, the month of Magha, which is January and February. As Dattatreya, the incarnation of the personality of Godhead, has explained, व्रतदानतपोभिश्च न तथा प्रीयते हरि माघे मज्ना मात्रेण यथा प्रीणाति madhava. The Supreme Lord Madhava is not as pleased by vows, charity, or austere penances as by one's simply taking a bath in the month of Magha. Padma Puran, Uttarakhanda 126.8. Sri Madhava is the presiding deity of Prayag Tirtha. After bathing, the sages were sitting in front of Lord Madhav, feeling extremely fortunate to be together in such a sacred place at such a time. 26. Dear Mother, at that time a first-class Brahmana arrived at the holy site called the Shashvamedha Tirtha. He was fully absorbed in devotional service to the Supreme Lord. You doing okay, Prabhuji?
Yes, bro.
I'll continue.
Please. Thank you.
Okay, text 27. Richly endowed with all assets, he was the spiritual leader of that region. His retinue surrounded him as he prepared to distribute food to the local Brahmanas. Having collected all sorts of valuable items for worship of the Lord, the generous Brahmana then saw to the preliminaries, first by purifying a large area on the ground. There he swiftly built a handsome altar, which he smeared with mud with his own hand and covered with a canopy. Commentary. The unnamed Brahmana who came to conduct public worship of Lord Krishna at Dashashvamedha Ghata was the acknowledged spiritual authority of that area. Although rich and influential, with ample means for a comfortable life, He was a fully surrendered Vaishnava. Everything he had, he used for the Lord's pleasure. By his heartfelt service, he satisfied the Lord and everyone else. At this, at this same Dashashwamedha Ghata at Prayag, Srila Rupa Goswami later received personal instructions from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for 10 days. 30. Next, he placed Lord Krishna's form as the Shaligram Shila on an auspicious golden throne and worshipped the Lord with great devotion. Joyfully, he performed the prescribed rituals. Commentary. The Shaligram Shila is a sacred stone worshipped by Vaishnav Brahmins as a deity form of Lord Vishnu. The stones are found only in the Gandaki river near the village of Shaligram in the Himalayan foothills. So precise is the science of Archana that an expert Brahmana can recognize each Shaligram Shila as a specific incarnation of Lord Vishnu by unique markings. 31. In front of Lord Hari, he placed food, clothes, and other offerings. He made a one-man festival by dancing, singing, playing music, and so on. When worshipping the deity of the Supreme Lord, one should first greet him as an honorable guest with water for washing his feet, scented water for drinking, and other items prescribed by standard etiquette. One should treat the deity nicely and offer gifts of cloth and other valuables such as perfumes and incense. The lamp offered in the Aarti ceremony represents the light one would show at the entrance of one's house for a guest arriving at night. A Ratrikam. So Arati is A Ratrikam. Ratri is night. 32. He then offered homage to the Brahmanas present who were expert in arguing from the Vedas, Puranas, and other texts. He also offered respects to the sannyasis, householders, and brahmacharis. 33. And he honored the Vaishnavas, who were always greedy to enjoy the bliss of glorifying Krishna. Thus, he encouraged the many respectable persons there with attractive words and behavior. 34. After placing on his head the water that had washed their feet, he worshipped those persons with food and other items he had presented to the Supreme Lord. Commentary. One class of learned Brahmanas like to display their knowledge by defeating others in argument. But another class of Brahmanas, the pure Vaishnavas, prefer to use their energy to hear and chant about Krishna. Some Vaishnavas are also Brahmanas by birth and external behavior, but pure Vaishnavas of any social status, even those who come from lower castes, are always better situated spiritually than ordinary Brahmanas. Pure Vaishnavas bother to enter debates only when the cause of Krishna consciousness can be advanced, when criticism of other Vaishnavas or the Supreme Lord have to be answered, or when victims of misconceptions have to be saved. The Brahmana Vaishnava conducting this festival honored the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas with pleasant, encouraging words and with respectful behavior, bowing down to them, washing their feet, offering them arti, and so on. 35. Next, he respectfully fed everyone else, including the most fallen outcasts. In suitable ways, he satisfied even the dogs, jackals, birds, and insects. Commentary. Shudras and outcasts are commonly considered fallen, and men who are poor and hungry are usually identified as wretched. But the real criterion of a person's fallen, wretched condition is his lack of devotion to the Supreme Lord. Amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. Shrishtastakam 3. One who wants to worship Lord Hari perpetually by Nam Sankirtan must give up demanding respect for himself and must practice showing respect to every living creature. But the respect one shows must be appropriate for each individual. Only a fool would embrace a hungry tiger in the name of brotherly love. And so, a devotee endeavoring for pure Krishna consciousness should keep a respectful distance from persons of dubious character and faith. 36. When he had thus satisfied everyone, the holy men invited him to take the remnants of the sacrifice. With his family and followers, that leader of Brahmanas then enjoyed the nectarian prasad with great delight. Commentary. Only after every living being in the vicinity was fed and pleased did the host, with his family and servants, honor Lord Madhav's prasad. This food was now Amrita, the elixir of immortality, a sheer delight to taste, because it had been offered to Lord Krishna in devotional sacrifice. After this, he again went before the Shalagram deity of Lord Krishna, and with folded hands he offered to the Lord all the pious credit he had earned by the sacrifice. Commentary. In sacrificial offerings, the mantras chanted declare that the oblations after being offered belong to the deities being worshipped. Idam Indraya no mama. This is for Indra. It is no longer mine. But most performers of Vedic rituals, even while verbally declaring surrender, maintain the subtle ambition to possess not only the oblations themselves, but the fruits, the outcome of the sacrifice. Pure devotional service begins when one makes offerings only for the pleasure of the Supreme, with no hidden motive. Text 38. The leader of the Brahmanas put the deity comfortably to rest and got ready to return home. Sri Narada, however, had been watching him at a distance from within the assembly of sages. Just then Narada stood up. Again and again Narada announced, "This is the Supreme Lord Vishnu's most dear devotee." Then he ran up to the Brahmana and declared him the recipient of Lord Krishna's highest mercy. Narada proclaimed this openly to all, beside himself with eagerness for devotional service to Lord Krishna. Commentary. Narada had been enjoying the festival incognito, but the ecstasy he was tasting in pure love impelled him to announce his realizations. All the Lord's devotees are dear to the Lord, as implied here by the word Janam, which can mean either people in general or some specific person. Narada knows whom the Lord most favors, and thus the word Janam also expresses a more confidential idea in Narada's mind. He is ultimately referring to the dearest servant of Sri Krishna, Srimati Radharani. The Brahmana and other devotees Narada will praise are also aware of their own lesser devotional standing. Narada here speaks mainly to enlighten the public, but also to gain the impetus for his expedition to the far ends of the universe in search of Sri Krishna's best devotees. 41. Sri Narada said, "O leader of the Brahmanas, it is you who have received Lord Krishna's greatest favor. After all, you have such wealth, property, generosity, and personal opulence. O wise one, in this best of holy places, we have now seen for ourselves that you are using all these assets exclusively to establish pure religion." Commentary. The Brahmana's personal opulence is the paraphernalia showing his status, his vehicles, special items of clothing, and so on, and his entourage of family members, associates, and subordinates. His pure religion is devotional service to the Supreme, to the personality of Godhead. The Brahmana did not abuse any of his apparently material assets by employing them for material purposes. These assets had come to him as byproducts of his devotional service, without his striving for them. He could hardly keep them hidden, as Narada here remarks, but still he was happy to put them to transcendental use. 43. That most learned Brahmana then replied to the best of sages, "O Master, what signs of Krishna's mercy have you seen in me?" 44. Who am I but a most wretched person? How much charity am I able to give? What opulence do I have? And how have I ever reciprocated with the Lord in devotional service? Commentary. Any true devotee of Krishna considers himself insignificant, thinking himself one of countless jivas who are mere sparks of God's splendor. The devotee is sorry for having foolishly rebelled against his creator, and reflecting on this rebellion, he thinks that his relative influence among other fallen jivas means little. 45. But in the southern country there lives a great ruler whose kingdom has many temples of God and the demigods. He is a true recipient of Lord Krishna's mercy. 46. Saintly mendicants come to his kingdom from all directions, along with pilgrims and other visitors. They wander happily, sustained by food that has been offered to Krishna. Commentary. The Brahmana describes the great king as a Maharaj, a ruler of several other kings in his area. He was not the emperor of the entire continent, the Chakravarti. That higher position was occupied at the time by Pandav Yudhishthir. Later in this chapter, the southern king will also be called Sarvabhauma because his kingdom occupied a large area. Many accomplished saints migrated to his kingdom, attracted by its spiritual features. Other people also came, including ordinary visitors, renounced pilgrims traveling to purify themselves, and distressed persons in search of food and shelter. All of them took advantage of the sacred, delicious Krishna Prasad, freely available throughout the kingdom. Near this 47. Near this king's palace, the personality of Godhead resides as if directly in his original form of eternal existence, knowledge, and bliss. He has kindly assumed a non-moving appearance. Commentary. The Lord's incarnation as the deity in a temple is stationary, at least to ordinary eyes. He is the same absolute person who lives in the spiritual world, yet he assumes a special form to make himself visible to everyone. The Lord's pastime incarnations, who move about displaying adventures with their devotees, are rarely seen in this cosmic manifestation. But the Vishnu deity in this king's capital was so potent and attractive that the citizens almost forgot he was a non moving deity. 48. In that kingdom, a joyous, ever fresh festival is always being celebrated. At each moment, there are new offerings and performances of worship. Commentary. The worship in the main temple of the capital never became stale and ritualistic. New items of worship were constantly introduced, and more important, the devotees' interest in pleasing the Lord was also ever fresh. Thus, the displays of worship pleased both the deity and the public. 49. The king respectfully feeds all the residents of his country and many foreign visitors with the remnants of Lord Vishnu's worship. Commentary. To accommodate all the residents and travelers, the king maintained many Vishnu temples throughout the country, but the main temple in the capital was especially famous for its worship and prasad. Text 50 and 51. Saintly devotees of Lord Vishnu come from various countries to reside permanently in the kingdom. They come out of eagerness to see the lotus-eyed deity of the Lord, to relish the food and other special remnants from the Lord, and to obtain the association of spiritually advanced persons. Commentary. Besides pure devotees of Vishnu, other spiritualists also came. Those dressed as holy men but spiritually not fully qualified were also treated with respect. Even cats and dogs should receive Lord Krishna's prasad. For the spiritual guidance, one should approach only bona fide followers of the Vaishnav Parampara. 52. The king has given his kingdom away to the demigods and Brahmanas, dividing it among them. His kingdom is completely free from sorrow, social disruption, and fear. Commentary. The king granted to the presiding deities of local temples, and to the Brahmanas of each region official title to the various parts of the country. He considered himself merely the caretaker of the kingdom, under authority from its legal owners. 53. In that kingdom, the earth yields crops without being tilled. Rain falls just enough for people's comfort, and whatever fruits, vegetables, and clothing one desires are easily to be had. Commentary. In the Bible, Genesis 3:19, we read that God punished Adam for rebellion by cursing him that outside the Garden of Eden he would have to till the earth to earn his food by the sweat of his face. In quotes. Previously, the Bible tells us Adam and Eve had enjoyed the fruits of Eden without having to farm. The same ideal condition prevailed thousands of years ago in this South Indian kingdom. Rain fell just enough to make good crops, but mostly at night when it would least disturb the citizens. Text 54. The citizens all happily follow the king as if they were his children. They perform their own social duties and are devoted to Lord Krishna. Commentary. Like children who love and respect their parents, the citizens not only obeyed the king's directions but also wanted to follow the example of his good character. 55. The king is always prideless, worshipping Lord Achyuta with services a menial assistant would perform. He pleases all the people and is dear to the Lord. Commentary. So vast and rich a domain and such a reputation for religious accomplishments would make an ordinary king proud. But this Maharaj was a pure Vaishnava. He was happy to serve the Supreme Lord in the humblest ways, which is washing and decorating the floors of his temples, keeping the temple lamps filled with oil, and so on. As the term Achyuta Priya indicates, he did this not to make a show of humility, but purely out of devotional enthusiasm. 56 and 57. He always tries to satisfy the Lord. He himself performs some kirtan before the Lord's deity, chanting the Lord's names composed in various attractive arrangements. He dances, sings wonderful songs, and plays instruments. His sons, wives, brothers, grandsons, priests, servants, ministers, and other subordinates, he has them also take part. Commentary. The king did not have to force his relatives and assistants to take part in hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord, because they were all first class Vaishnavas. 58. These good qualities arise from his devotion for Krishna. How many of them can I count, describe, or even be aware of? The Brahmana's logic is as follows. The king's good qualities I have mentioned are all signs of his being the true recipient of Lord Krishna's mercy. I do not have the same mercy because I do not have the same good qualities. Each of the devotees approached by Narada will argue in a similar way. In fact, however, all these devotees are very fortunate, even if they stand on different levels of perfection. The differences recognized by Narada and those with whom he speaks are spiritual differences, not determined by material rank or position. The devotee Brahmana would not have called the king from the south a better Vaishnav than himself had the Brahmana held the prejudice that Brahmanas are always better than Kshatriyas. 59. Sri Parikshit said, Narada then went to the country of that best of the kings to see him. Wherever Narada went, he found the people absorbed in festive worship of the Lord. 60. Narada arrived at the capital, vibrating his veena with delight. Seeing even greater splendor than the Brahmana had described, he approached the king and spoke. Sri Narada said, You are the real recipient of Sri Krishna's mercy. After all, your kingdom is so opulent. It has the best citizens, endowed with the most excellent character, religiousness, prosperity, kingdom, and devotion to God. Commentary: a sure sign of a ruler's virtue is the good qualities of his subjects. The people of his kingdom were not merely decorated with a veneer of culture, they were actually civilized according to Vedic standards. The good citizens did their prescribed duties responsibly. They contributed to the general welfare by working, each as he was able, to introduce Krishna conscious practices everywhere. Abandoning pride and other godless tendencies, they gave charity by feeding sannyasis and hungry people, used extra wealth for offering in worship of the Supreme Lord, and studied the Vedic scriptures, from which they learned the value of liberation and devotional service. The people aspired to become pure devotees of the Lord. Thus, they realized all the goals of human life, which were religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, liberation, and pure Krishna consciousness. 62. Sri Parikshit said, Narada, the best of Vaishnavas, singing along with his veena, thus expansively described the king, praising his greatness, and Narada embraced him again and again. 63. The king, that ruler of a vast region, then worshipped the topmost sage and humbly replied, his head bowed down in embarrassment by the weight of hearing his own praise. 64 to 65. The king said, O sage, among the demigods, I am a human being with a short lifespan, little opulence, and little to give others. I have no independence. I am constantly attacked by fear and ruled by the threefold miseries of material life. I would not even deserve Krishna's word that in the future he might show me his mercy. Why do you wrongly consider me an object of his compassion? Commentary: the king thought Narada could have mistaken him to be a favored devotee of Krishna's only by failing to use his natural good discretion. Before becoming a pure devotee, one has to free oneself from illusion. But the king's opinion of himself was that he was still Maya's slave, subject to the tyranny of ritual duties. What to speak of having realized his relationship with Lord Krishna, he felt he did not even deserve that the Lord could promise, I will show you my favor someday. Or, understanding Krishnanuragya vai vakya, vakyasya. In other sense, he did not deserve to have anyone say, this person is favored by Krishna. 66. The demigods are the real objects of the Supreme Lord. Sorry, I'm going to repeat this. 66. The demigods are the real objects of the Supreme Lord Vishnu's mercy. They have effulgent bodies and are always worshipable by men. 67. They are sinless, fixed in goodness, free from distress, and always happy. They act and travel however they like. They give their blessings by granting what their devotees desire. Their food is nectar of immortality, which does away with such miseries as death, disease, and old age. Though not forced by hunger or thirst, the demigods enjoy great satisfaction in partaking of this nectar by their own sweet will. O godly Narada, on the strength of their good fortune, they live in the realm of heaven, which humans on earth can attain only by perfect pious works. Commentary: the saintly king proposes that the demigods are the most favored devotees of Krishna. To demonstrate this, he contrasts them with ordinary human beings. Humans like himself acknowledge the superiority of the demigods and worship him in Vedic sacrifices. The demigods, less encumbered than, than humans by physical restraints, are free to travel as they like, even flying in the sky without vehicles. Some rich and powerful humans may be famous for charity, but the demigods have universal powers by which they can fulfill all their worshippers' desires. The Soma nectar the demigods drink frees them from death, disease, and old age. and as implied by the word adi, and so on, also from fatigue, perspiration, bodily odor, and other embarrassments. Since the demigods are never hungry or thirsty, one might question what benefit they derive from drinking their soma. The king answers that they enjoy soma very much. Their pleasure is more subtle than the annamaya gratification of ordinary eating and drinking. Compared with the mortals of earth, the inhabitants of heaven seem immortal and independent. They must therefore be most dear to Lord Krishna. Text 70. My dear sage, the most distinguished of these demigods is Purandara Indra. He has full power to reward and punish, and he gives the world life by providing rain. Commentary. Purandara is the name of the current king of heaven. 71. He rules the three planetary systems for 71 celestial ages, a length of sovereignty no mundane king could earn, even by 100 horse sacrifices. Should we stop here, Prabhu?
Yeah, if it seems like an okay place, it would be good for me to conclude. Um, any reflections you'd like to share?
Yeah, I was thinking how humble, both the Brahmana and the king were, that
Yeah,
they were like, even though they were like so blissed out, still, they considered themselves, so low.
yeah,
And I was thinking this is not low self-esteem, but this is considering themselves lower than the straw in the street.
yeah,
So I think that was one difference. The other thing which I was thinking was they're not comparing here, right? They're not comparing and saying that, oh, see, I'm just an ordinary man, but the demigods, they're on heaven, they're drinking soma ras. Like that was one point I was just contemplating. Like, are they comparing? But even if they're comparing in a way that, well, I'm lower, uh, like because they have more opulence, they have the mercy of Krishna more than me. Not that
yeah,
I desire, but
yeah. I think it's the opulence and also um, the service rendered. I think it's maybe that's part of it too, that they're recognizing that this other person is doing more service, is being engaged more in service, and therefore is a greater recipient of mercy. Like the Brahmana is saying, what am I doing? There is a king who's has all of these same qualities that you see in me, and he's giving shelter to a whole kingdom of persons, and they're all coming to him, brahmanas and all living entities. And now the king is saying, who am I? Look at Lord Indra, he's giving shelter to the entire three worlds. And another thing that I don't didn't catch if it was mentioned, but um oh, maybe that won't be until the next part. Actually, there's a part, maybe that's not until Gopakumar in the second part, that one reason why Indra is so appreciated is because he has Vamanadev there, to give him in his own court as his younger brother, is a form of the Lord, is Vamana. So that's another part of Indra's good fortune. But maybe that won't come up until Gopakumar, this section. I'm not sure. I guess we'll see.
nice.
But yeah, I was appreciating how each person was like the chief person in their domain. The Brahmana, he was the head Brahmana of that whole area of Prayag. Like everyone acknowledged him as the spiritual authority. And then this king, he was considered the most pious and devotionally elevated person in his kingdom. But they were able to be humble even though they were, in one sense, they did not have any peers in their area. They were the top. But they were able to remain humble because they had a wider perspective than their own local jurisdiction, their own local area. You know, they understood that, well, this is just one small part of existence that I have. Maybe I'm, you know, I have some position here, but if you just take a step, you look from a broader perspective, you know, actually there's so many people who are way better than me.
So small, yeah.
Yeah, and it's that's really nice. So
The other point which really struck me was how, it was mentioned that because they were such good rulers, everybody was attracted to come to that area.
yeah,
And it was reminding me of your community at Ypsilanti. Like it's like, right? Isn't it like everybody is gravitating towards that? And
it's
it
true.
also mentioned why. Like it's because of Vaishnavas, because of Prasad, because of like many other things. And I was like, yeah, that's what Madhavananda Prabhu says in his lectures, right? Like we need to build that community.
Yeah,
When you build that community, like automatically everybody gets attracted.
yeah,
Like Devavrata Prabhu, like he went to Atlanta. Like why? Like it's because of the association, the
yeah.
community.
Sangha, loving exchange.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
that's the
was.
secret.
And I was also thinking about ISV because it mentioned leader. Like
Yeah,
whatever the leader does, you can see it in the subjects, right? Like the good qualities of the subjects. And I was like, yeah, like it makes a very big difference.
mm. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you for your nice association.
Forward to
And
reading again next Wednesday.
next,
And I'll find my book so that I can also contribute to the
okay,
reading.
all right. Thank you so
Haribo.
much. Hare Krishna.